Player Will.
Welcome back, Visions fans. Ready Player Will here. Tomorrow we have the Final Fantasy X-2 collaboration starting, and so this is a quick hit review for both Paine and Yuna, who you do have the opportunity to start building tomorrow. Paine is the free unit given out within this collaboration. Yuna will be an on-banner unit that you'll have to pull. But hopefully this quick hit can give you an idea of whether or not you want to prioritize either one of them and where you can get the best value in the short term before we start getting some more of the goodies within the collaboration. Now, kicking things off with Paine, she is a DPS unit belonging to the Dark element. She does belong to the Greatsword group for job-based division card eligibility, and she is a physical slash damage-oriented unit. They've given her the unique main job of Warrior 10-2. With the Blade Knight and Lancer subjobs, the Blade Knight is actually the recent Lilith unit that came out. It's her job that they've given Paine this subjob as, so a lot of people may not be that familiar with it. It's actually kind of a nice subjob for her. She is a 90 cost unit though, so just a step down from where the top tier units are from a cost perspective. Now, just some general thoughts when I look at this character. She is a bruiser type unit to me, and she does pack a punch. She does have some good innate penetrations that do get better with some buffs and abilities that she has. And she does have some teammate utility of attack percent gain, haste, and protect to herself and allies. She does have a 25% teammate heal as a sequential ability on one of her abilities for kind of teammate support. Think a little bit like A2 if you go back to that Greatsword meta where she had the capability to heal a local teammate. And the same ability can also decrease enemy unit resistance penetration, which some of you may have seen with Nickel as of late, where this is a way to reduce the amount of unit type, some of those select 2 abilities that might come at your team. Now, she does have 2 multi-hits in the main kit. One is a 30% slash and peril. The other is a 50% chain resistance decrease, which does help her own slash damage chaining capabilities, which there are some units that can absolutely take advantage of that with her. She is well-rounded survivability-wise, both versus physical and magic damage types. There are things in her kit that allow her to kind of go toe-to-toe with both, and she does have some great capability to remove both courage and re-raise on multiple enemies at once if you are using the Blade Knight subjob. So this, to me, is a pretty good starting spot for her. The good teammates that I consider, looking at Dark as an element and then Greatsword as its own team of weapon types, obviously you can go either way with both of these team building styles, either mono Dark or mono Greatsword. That goes without saying. A couple of these units I'm not all that high on though. I have them here for honorable mention. I really don't think Sunil or Bronwell are really great teammates. It's just natural that they happen to be the same element or the same weapon type. Even Raph is a little bit outdated at this point, so this selection of good teammates probably looks a little bit bigger than what you'll see in practice for Paine, but there are some other job-based vision card overlaps that I do like. Staff Black Mage is one of the stronger ones. It's not perfect, and I don't know if it's a ton of synergy with Paine personally, but Sword Warrior really sticks out here, where not only are there a handful of really compelling light and dark units, that light and dark does have a great overlap because of Dark Bahamut when that vision card does to enable them, but there's a ton of cards in common, really great vision cards, quite frankly, between both Greatsword and Sword Warrior. Staff Devout also has a handful of really great vision cards as well, and same thing with a great amount of units. I mean, Exia, Lucille, and Angela all would slot perfectly alongside Paine. Bow units do technically have a semblance of something there. I do really just look at this from the White Lotus Fina perspective, particularly as a light unit, where again we talk about dark and light, what they have for synergy, that Bow is a pretty good rainbow class with these vision cards that if you're going for a light and dark team and you want to throw White Lotus Fina in there for some support, I could absolutely see something there. And gloves, I'm really not sensing any kind of actual in-game synergy, but the vision cards are kind of there, so it's an honorable mention. But to me, the rainbow capabilities of Greatsword, particularly for Paine, are fair, just because I don't think she's really like a hard carry DPS unit. She's really good, don't get me wrong. But I think she's likely going to be playing within the confines of Greatsword or Dark for the majority of the time. Now, one of my 3 favorite teams, on that note, I do think this top team here is one of the more favorable ones. This is Paine, Cypher, and Cloud. Again, pure slash offense, well-rounded utility for what they do for removing sorts of damage types and just cleaving through enemy defenses. There's a risky amount of sustain within that team because Paine has that 25% teammate heal. Cypher has an absorb potential, but there's really not a lot outside of that. So this team is a little bit boom or bust in that regard, which this second team here does kind of address that, where I do think if you lean into that White Lotus Fina team, and I think someone like Cloud, frankly, because I think is a little more consistent than Cypher, but Cypher absolutely has seen some great resurgence with Sephiroth fading away a little bit, that I do think this is a great potential team too, or theoretically just going straight mono Greatsword. If you decided, no, you're not going to go the White Lotus Fina route, go with someone like Joom instead, who has her own kind of self-healing capabilities. I think Paine is a replacement for A2 and any kind of mono Greatsword team you might have been using over the last, I don't know, 3 to 6 months. This last team is a little bit more of a future team, though, because the Dark Veritas unit is not complete at this time, but there's no doubt that Paine and Dark Veritas are together like husband and wife. That's such a good synergy of the Dark and the Greatsword together, and they have so much overlap in their kits of what they do to enable each other, that in the future, when Dark Veritas gets his 140, if you threw Cypher in there, or even Cloud, again, for that same kind of light and slash dark synergy, I absolutely could see some great upside. And I actually don't hate the concept of Lemuray in this middle position as well, where that mono dark team, just to enable some quicken capabilities and heal the team up and whatnot, I think you could do a lot worse personally. Now, my overall expectations for Guild War, I think, is a 3. I think it's good. You know, it's a 90 cost unit. She doesn't really have a strong niche. She's a little bit of a generalist, which honestly not a bad thing for Guild War. For Arena, though, I do think it's a fair at 2. I don't really think she does a lot to really hit hard in Arena, that when you think about, oh man, what team can I put together to really beat this other one? Paine is the one that comes to mind. She's a really good unit, but I don't see her for long-term amazing Arena usage in particular. For PvE scores, though, I would say that she's great. She does have slow capability, agility % down capability, the multi-hits as we mentioned, the Dark Imperil, which is on one of her sub-jobs, and a 30% slash attack type Imperil, so I like her a lot for the PvE scores. The cost-limited stuff, though, for me, is a 3 for good. Being a 90 cost unit, there's not many cost-limited opportunities where a 90 cost unit is really going to be the go-to there, and even then, I'm probably looking elsewhere to maximize my cost format, but she could be a lot worse. Cost limit, I think, is just fine at a 3, and the TMR is fair. It's not amazing. I'm not even going to say it's niche. I just don't know if it's a strong reason to build her to level 99. For an overall grade of a 3, I think she's a good unit. I think she's one of the better free units that we've gotten in the collabs as of late. I think she pairs exceptionally well with Dark Veritas, who is technically another free unit, and for anyone that has a well-established Light and Dark account, I think the two of them really go well with what that element has already accumulated so far. She's well-rounded enough that she doesn't have a niche necessarily, which I do think gives her some good meta versatility. But I do think the team building is slightly limited, where I don't think she's the same Greatsword level as someone like Cloud or Joom, who you can really throw into any team and get some really high impact results. I think she's still very solid, very well-rounded, very good. But if the bar is here, she's not at the bar, if that makes sense. Is she worth building as the free unit? I'm not personally. I've been focusing more on the Sottily and Exia route myself, and I am really liking the Yuna and Jaden synergy that, although Paine is a great free unit and easy unit to play, I think she's great for a lot of casual players, that if you guys just want to have a nice dark slasher, Veritas of the Dark, and if you have any kind of other dark and light slashers from earlier in the year, I think she's a solid pick. Now for Yuna, another DPS unit of the light element. Instead, she does equip guns as her weapon group and is a physical missile type unit. They've given her the unique main job of Gunner, 10-2 as well, with the Sniper sub-job and Trick Lancer sub-job as a 100 cost unit, so a higher cost than what Paine is. Yeah, she's a big-time gun unit with loads of teammate utility on that first buff. It's a 20% damage amp, it's Dispel Haste on hit, it's a minus 20% healing power on hit, and there are other things for Yuna. That's just what she gives to her teammates alone. But the self-buff after is really a lethal buff, where not only does it enable a new kind of follow-up attack where she does not need to be in the proximity of her teammates, but it's a nullification of the CT up on enemies, and it's a re-raise seal, and she does have re-raise herself, so that does help her survivability. She's got great damage capabilities with removing what we call Protect 2.0. You might see it described as reduce physical damage by a certain percent. That's relatively rare. It's only her and Riku, and then Delita and Varush on his limit break that are able to do that in the game currently. She can also remove both physical and magical type honeycombs, which is great for Jaden as a partner. She also brings a 60% Unit Crush. That's a guaranteed critical hit and does technically have a physical barrier break on the sub job, although you probably won't use it all that often. The missile res penetration is slightly lacking. It's really only on her limit break, as is any kind of general dispel capability within her teams, but she does at least have the haste dispel, which is an important component of the general dispel, but still an effective DPS. She's got a great 4-hit limit break that will destroy many of those 3-hit barriers and then proceed to hit a 4th time. Really great for breaking those barriers or starting a chain on a really bulky unit. The Trials of Reckoning item that will be coming out in a couple weeks is a big time item to look out for, though, if you are building a unit, because it gives you the option to have an extra range capability for her missile type attack, so please be on the lookout for that. And finally, an exceptional amount of accuracy innately if you put her passive on, which admittedly isn't the best build for her. You're sacrificing a lot by not using her 2 best passives. She technically becomes the most accurate character in the game innately with that passive. So that's a really great thing going into this potential evade uptick that we're seeing. Now, for good teammates, I think there's a lot of light units here. Cloud, Veritas of the Light, and Fina all immediately come to mind. I think there's some niche and fun copium ideas with units like Thancred, who is getting a big Final Fantasy XIV update, as is did Ramza in the Tactics update. For the gun teams, though, a little bit more limited. Obviously, it's just Jaden. Alaya did get her MA3 as of late. Is it amazing? It's good, but I don't know if it's a compelling reason to pull Yuna, if that makes sense. And Melnia is still a relatively solid option, but not nearly on the level as Jaden. And in terms of rainbow play, this is where Gun has some limitations currently. It's not that it doesn't exist, and quite frankly, Gun doesn't need all the bells and whistles that some classes do, particularly Yuna, who's very self-sufficient overall. But to me, some of the better synergies, Sword Red Mage does stick out with what they have for Vision Card synergies. I do think Greatsword is here, which is ironic because in Paine's quick hit thoughts, I did not list Gun as a synergy. I don't think Gun and Greatsword are an amazing synergy. I think it's just starting to be built up because the Eureka card that's coming with her does technically link them together. I really like this more just from the perspective of the light and dark units that exist within Greatsword, but even then, a little bit of a reach. I really don't think this is a well-established class. I do think Sword Warrior is another decent one too. Again, this is another class listed on the Eureka Vision card, which is coming out with Yuna tomorrow. Again, the bones of it are there, but it's still a little premature. And even Mace, this is a very much power-crept group. It's really the Bloody Road Vision card that's really propping up the synergy between these two groups. Not a lot of upside with Mace currently, but maybe in the future there certainly could be. And Staff Devout is, again, kind of an honorable mention. There's only 2 Vision cards that are there that I really think are high-impact Vision cards. So again, from a rainbow perspective, you're really kind of reaching where some of these gun units do well in, but I do think if you're running a very basic Jaden and unit team together, and you have a potential different third unit there, I think that's potent enough with the gun vision cards that exist that team is going to be still very impactful, which, on that note, let's talk about my 3 favorite teams. I do think my top favorite team obviously is a unit with Jaden, and I do think you can sub in either Lucille or Summer Resnick. What Summer Resnick does well is not only the dispel of follow-up attacks on the enemies, which we're going to see a lot of incoming here, but also the fact that it's an accuracy percent buff, and her aura is blind resistance too. So against some of these Riku teams and Sadali teams that have blind in them, maybe some of the future Venera teams if there's an evasion angle, Summer Resnick gives these 2 units a very big accuracy boost, and they're already very innately accurate. Lucille is just a different kind of unit there, where obviously the double haste and what she does for some of the physical damage reduction certainly has its own value. I think the second best team here is just a generic Cloud and Cypher one. Again, this is kind of a high octane offense here. Really not a lot of self-sustained whatsoever outside of Cypher's self-absorb. So this is, again, one of those teams that you're just really going to rely on some smart positioning and just blow the enemy away at the start of the fight. But I think it's got potential. And the last team here, a little bit outside the box, but I do think there's an interesting Staff Devout synergy there with even just those 2 vision cards, that if you put Yuna in a team with both of these units, where Exia technically has a really strong missile attack, that's a missile apparel that will amplify Yuna's damage, but in addition to that, Exia has that quicken capability on the Time Age sub that I could see some instances where maybe you get Yuna going early in the fight and have her limit break someone, boom, 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 there's that quadruple hit, Exia does the quicken, Yuna hits again, that unit is toast. I don't care what unit it is. There's no way you survive a consecutive hit from Yuna with the limit break and something else, at least in like 90% of cases. So I think there's something fun to be said there. But the overall expectations for me, Guild War, I think it's a 5. I think this is an excellent unit. particularly for the timing of the meta, which I'm going to talk about in the key takeaways. Arena, I also think is a great unit, particularly for the new 5v5 Arena mode that's coming out. She is an exceptionally stellar unit for that Arena game mode, which I don't typically consider in this grade, but I think we're going to have to start to now as the future goes on. The PvE scores for me is a fair, although there are some chaining capabilities, there's not as much in the way of imperils or other kinds of things that I look for in a unit for PvE, particularly for a very loaded light element. It's not bad. I think it's fair. The cost limited for me is a great though, and a lot of that is based upon her follow-up attack and the teammate utility that all you have to do is put her in there and you're just going to get a lot of damage scattered throughout the fight. The TMR, I also do think is a great one here. I think SI4, where it's an accuracy bump. There's a big, fat accuracy stat on it, though, for extra stat boosting as well. I do think that's going to be a valuable TMR going forward in the future here for an overall grade of a 5 as amazing. This is a killer next-gen unit that brings Jaden in particular to new heights, where Jaden's really looking for that high-impact partner, and Yuna is absolutely going to thrive with him too. I do also think she's a great choice as a light unit with a variety of team-building options within that element and the dark element too. I do also think that there's a huge amount of current utility needed for what we're seeing amongst some of the top meta teams, namely the Sodali Exia teams, some of the incoming evasion teams with Venera and Riku, where not only is she super high accuracy, but she's got that ranged haste removal. So right now what you're seeing with Shreka and Exia is the ability to seal enemy dispel capability, which means if they're hasted and they're able to seal the enemy buff removal, their haste is just going to stay on until it wears off. Yuna, being a ranged unit and staying outside of their hit range, means she has more opportunity and a higher likelihood to dispel that haste before she gets sealed herself. So that's a big advantage. And the CT nullification too, where you see things like the Wizard Rod, where you fall below a certain amount of health, it procs CT up. You're seeing units now like Exia that give the CT up to a teammate as a sequential ability. There's a lot there that has some huge uptime value too. And to me, Yuna is one of those units that will only get better as the gun vision cards continue to grow and open up some new doors with who that third unit might be, whether it's a tank, whether it's another support, whether it's another strong DPS, could be another gun unit for all we know. But that's my quick hit thoughts for both Paine and Yuna. I'll be hopefully doing full character reviews for both of them pretty soon here, but I know the collaboration is coming quick, so I at least wanted to give some initial expectations for how excited you should be, which you should be. These are great units. This is a really fun collab. It's not going to completely overturn the game, but Yuna and Riku in particular are two units that are going to enable new doors to be opened. So very exciting time for both of these units. But that's it for now. Questions, comments, critiques, criticisms, throw them in the comment section below, but I'll talk to y'all soon, and thanks for watching.